space of artivism. It's a little bit complex. Yeah, there's a lot of things that have to kind of affect the space in which I'm working in. The first one, of course, always being access. And for us, especially working in communities, especially marginalized communities, the issue of access is always one. Whether there's lockdown or not, that's always been problematic. And now it's even worse, because if we can't be in the space, how do we get information to the people, to young people? So even with the creation of new digital art, there's still the question of access for us, because just for example, with our own artists, we've had to channel quite a bit of our funding, well, redirecting it, going into other budgets in order to be able to fix the access issue, because they don't have access to the internet, to Wi-Fi spots, and things like that. So it's a question of, now we have to send them like in intense amounts of data, just so that they can stay up to date with our programming, and even just to provide information, something basic as just checking up on how they're doing at home. You have to send them data bundles for WhatsApp, to check in, because you can't always call, or they're not always in a space where there's network. So when you move beyond that conversation, it's now, how do you have Zoom meetings? How do you have collaborative sessions? How do you communicate amongst yourselves as a group? So even that has been a bit of an issue, because not all of them have access to smartphones, right? So that they can download the apps for Zoom, so that they can be online to Google stuff, so that they can participate. Yeah, so that's just examples of the issue of access. So it compromises what we can do in terms of activities, because if we can't go out to the communities and they can't come to us, what is the next best alternative for them and for social intervention? Ultimately, for our vision going forward, with our art in Zimbabwe on a digital level, I think for us it's now, I mean, we will continue the conversation on inclusion. So it's a responsibility to us to make sure, but also to have others realize that when they create their content, they need to make it inclusive, for example, for persons with hearing impairments, because we still want them to have access to mainstream arts, but we need mainstream artists to be considerate of other people's inabilities to effectively absorb their art or their communication because of something that they don't have, whether it's sight or sound, or so we see art becoming more digitally inclusive, in that people will add subtitles when they create documentaries or films, but also they will consider other languages. Like, when you're making your medium, is it inclusive of people who don't understand English, people who don't understand Shona? So making it accessible. For us, digital marketing has now become WhatsApp, or digital participation or digital art for us is WhatsApp. It's short videos that we can send to people that they can download on their phones. So they don't have to have Google Drive or Dropbox or any of that stuff. If they have access to Facebook or Instagram, great. But ultimately, we are streamlining it to meet people where they are. So that's something that all we believe is going to be part of one of our biggest advocacy standpoints, is as creatives, now that we have to participate in our arts in a limited capacity, how can we still make that accessible to people who would not otherwise be able to go onto your website or watch an hour-long YouTube video of your tutorial or your talk or your round table or whatever it is that you're doing on Zoom? How can we condense digital art so that it becomes easy to share it at the most basic level of accessibility? Yeah, pretty much.